Welcome back, everybody, to the Razer League of Legends coverage here from I-51. I am Dignitas Stress. Alongside me is Scoundrel. We're into the picks and bans here between Infused and Rain.
Yeah, and it does look like the bans are coming thick and fast. LeBlanc, Thresh and Lulu being banned out by Infused. Morgana, Ziggs and Lee Sin coming out on the side of Rain. That's a couple of support bans and mid bans coming out on either side there, Stress.
Yeah, there's a lot of different bands here. Actually, kind of. Sorry, we're just fixing some audio stuff here while we're going through picks and bans. But yeah, surprised to see that Lee Sin ban. We were kind of talking a little bit about Lee Sin yesterday, and you'd mentioned that he has pretty much fallen off quite a lot. So actually, kind of surprising to see that.
Yeah, Lanky Dan, I believe, is the jungler, so he's been known for his Lee Sin play. Lanky Dan is fairly proficient on Lee Sin, so maybe looking to ban out the early game pressure that Lee Sin can still exert if played very well. It's more his late game and mid game team fights that have fallen off a little bit. Rain, Blackjack and Digger picking up that Nidalee and Leona, both of those being locked out straight away. Nidalee's such a highly contested pick right now.
Yeah, it's highly contested for this current patch. And we're looking at this picks and bans phase as we go along. Infused looking to pick up that Xin Zhao, and as we said, we are in the middle of fixing a couple of little issues here, so getting distracted every now and again. And just trying to keep on top of everything that's happening here so we can get the stream as good, because we know there's a little bit of a hum in the background, but we're trying to kind of root the problem out. So
yeah, hopefully have it sorted officially for next game for you guys. Hopefully. We've got a break after this, so maybe be working on it then. Lucian being picked up for Grimdog, aka Wawa. He's been playing it almost exclusively in solo queue now. Wawa was previously known for his Ezreal. It was his safe AD carry. A lot of people would tout that Wawa's AD carry skills were not quite on par with where he should be for this competing level, so he picked up the safe AD carries. Now, picking up Lucian is a very similar carry to Ezreal, but he needs a little bit more mechanical skill, and Wawa has improved a lot over the last year, so I'll be looking forward to seeing how he plays out with that. Imberlite locking in that Soraka, and if that is going to be a Talon, I would be very surprised. Maybe looking to exert the early game pressure on Nidalee.
I'm actually kind of surprised that Infused let Rise Kha'Zix so far down this picks and bans phase, especially Kha'Zix. We just saw Kha'Zix wreck face in the first game of the day, so having a Kha'Zix go all the way down to 4th pick there for Nutri is actually kind of surprising. And Infused are hovering over Karma and Soraka. This would be a very similar kind of setup. Well, I would say similar to Fnatic, but that would be Soraka mid if they were to lock that in. Now, Soraka has been used as quite a good lane bully in the solo lanes. Has a lot of sustain, and of course we've seen how important heals are in the current meta. They're going to change it last second over to a very different champion. No heals on that champion. That's a Katarina.
Now, I like it because Katarina will only lose her ultimate through a stun, and Leona is the only champion on the side of Rain that can offer that kind of disruption, which may not be targeted onto the Katarina directly, may go onto various members of Infused team. And obviously the snare from Rise does not stop the Katarina ultimate, and neither can anything that Nidalee does. So if Imberlite plays Katarina to a good level, then Katarina can be used to great effect with the roams this game. I'll be incredibly surprised to see a Vayne come out with, a Lucian and a Karma there. Vayne will really suffer in the early levels unless it's played at a very high level. So, the Vayne is still being hovered over. What do you think about that bot lane matchup? Because Vayne's not something you would classically go for with Leona, because the early game pressure that Vayne has is not akin to some of the better AD carries in the game for that kind of thing. It does work, but I think she's going to suffer versus the poke of a Karma. Yeah,
I completely agree that laning phase is going to be a little bit difficult, but I feel like in this situation, Rain is saying we're relying on Nutri enough for our early game. Nutri is going to do a good job as always, and as Kha'Zix, we've seen that early mid-game focus, and he's going to get us as far ahead as long as we're even in lane.
Look, I want to say
far enough ahead to get to our late-game composition of Vayne and Rise.
I do think Rain are putting all of their eggs in one basket, though. Really, they're relying on one champion, Nutri. Now we know Nutri is a solid jungle pick. So Nutri is one of the better junglers in the UK. He's reached challenger several times. This guy is the best of his crop, but everyone else on the side of Rain is a late game champion. So Vayne Rise there and Nidalee, all of them are there to do their late game pressure. None of them shine in the early game. Whereas on the side of Infused, we have some late game scaling champions too, but they all shine early on also.
I kind of feel like whenever a team does pick up the late game champions like that, I feel it just makes me think that the team are aware or think and believe they have the better decision making.
And laning phases.
Just, I feel like the more consistent teams are just so much more content to just be like, okay, we'll just beat you in the late game.
The problem with the Vayne pick right now, though, is because of how potent Exhaust is, as well as the Assassin meta right now. Vayne will not survive long against the Jax and the Katarina if caught out, even if the slightest bit out of position. So with that Exhaust on the Karma and the stun from the Jax, she's going to have a really hard team fighting phase as well. So again, we'll see. I mean, if Slight can get ahead and can keep himself ahead and get into the good positions that team fights can offer him, then he'll be doing really well. But however, Jax is just such a solid pickup against the Vayne too, because of the counter strike. You can avoid most of the auto attacks coming in, and Katarina too. All you need to do is get a bouncing blade into a Shampoo and maybe even a Blade Lotus, and Vayne's going to really be suffering. So again, there's a lot of late game eggs in this basket here for Rain, and I think that Infused had a slightly better rounded team comp for all phases of the game, to be honest, because they don't fall off late game. Jax is incredible late game, and Katarina is incredible late game. Lucian is a solid AD carry late game. I'd say the only member of their team that falls off will be Dan, but with the introduction of Feral Flare, even Xin Zhao can be sort of potent in the late game.
Yeah, this game really is just kind of down to how much can Imbolite snowball and who gets ahead in that top lane. Really, I feel like that's where a lot of this game is going to be decided, because Jax and Rise, both of them will end up kind of just reaching a point where they're content to just annihilate anybody they touch. But it's who gets there first, because whoever gets there first is going to push the other one further.
Well, technically, Rise will have the quicker burst in the late game. So
exactly, but it's down to who's in which team fight. Because again, you're talking about how good Jax is late game and can really exploit, 1v1ing Vayne. But then when you introduce Rise to that equation, it's kind of like one cancels one out, one cancels the other. It's just down to who lands those first sets of skills.
I do like the Rise into the Jax though. Jax will not be able to pressure Rise pre-6 effectively. Rise will then be able to heal up post-6 when Jax does get his passive from his ultimate. So again, that's going to be a very even matchup in that top lane, and I know I've seen Geobob play several games, and he's a very, very solid top laner, actually more known for his unconventional top lane picks like Warwick, so it's be interesting to see him more of a meta champion like Jax. The winner of this team, this game, I believe, will go up against the winner of,
I think it's Enigma and Perilous
Rift. So again, these guys all playing for this top lane, this upper bracket round, so going to be a close game, I feel, this one. These are two very good teams.
Yeah, this should be a really good game. I believe they're seeded 4th and 5th, these teams, actually, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, there we are. Closest matchup we've had all tournament.
Yeah, so let's hope that they give us a game good enough to warrant that. And I kind of feel like this is going to be a good game based on the picks alone.
We haven't seen a Vayne in this tournament yet, and actually Vayne is becoming less and less common because she's so easy to focus down now with that Exhaust. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how this Vayne performs, and look at that. Everyone on the side has got a Diamond Border except for Wawa, poor Wawa. But again, I'd like to see how Wawa fares up against the Vayne, because I think Wawa is a safe AD carry. He farms really well, but I've never seen him make the plays in bot lane. And to focus out a Vayne lane, you need to be making those kind of aggressive plays. That's not what Wawa is known for. So we'll see how that bot lane plays out.
I kind of, at this situation, I want to look at the double exhaust here that's on Rain, as opposed to, we've seen a lot of double heal. In this we're seeing double exhaust on Rain, and then teleport alongside an ignite and one heal.
I think it's a very solid tactic, because there are two targets that you really want to be exhausting on the side of Infused, and that's Jax and that's Katarina. If you only exhaust one of them, one of the other ones is going to be putting out a ton of damage across the team fight. So I like the double exhaust, because if Katarina and Jax jump onto a squishy target, both of them will get exhausted immediately if they're in the right position. So again, very tactical thinking coming out from Rain. And actually Rain's team comp is very solid because Nidalee can poke and then they have the hard engage of Leona. So I always like hard engage that follows up Nidalee poke. If you've just got the Nidalee poke, I think it's a little bit lackluster. Anyway, it does look like Rain are heading round to invade this blue buff on the side of Infused, but Infused are making the same decision and they're going to possibly head through their bottom tri-brush to the blue buff of Rain. So this is going to be a blue buff for blue buff. But actually, where are Rain going? This is very interesting positioning. Are they just going to get a really deep ward out there?
Yeah, they're getting that deep ward. Typically, we used to see these to predict any kind of lane swaps. I just wonder whether Rain and Infused have had any time to play each other. Typically, that is the mark of two teams that have played against each other a good few times and will be aware of the kind of strategies that they're running. Looks like they're pinging maybe for a second invade here. The pathing they were doing there was down towards blue, but...
Well, we are going to see a lane swap this game.
Yeah, well, I think that's what it is. They want the Vayne away from that Karma lane, the Karma Lucian lane.
Yeah.
And they're trying to preempt it. Now, if there is a lane swap, both top laners do have teleport, so it is easily swapped around, but we've seen teams initiate the lane swap and put their own duo lane into the top lane, and we've seen it go both ways. Vayne doesn't exactly have the best tower pushing potential this early on in the game. When you compare Lucian, he'll have a double shot. As well as Karma being able to harass and land ranged auto attacks, whereas Leona is melee range and doesn't actually do too much in a 2v1. They may be catching Geobob out here, but he's spotted them out and will route them away from this blue area, so that 2v1 has been spotted.
Yeah, that's a very good invade by these two. Dan is going to take away the blue buff of Nutri, and that's a good ward coming out from Jax just to secure their own blue buff, so if there is an invade they can react to it. It doesn't look like Infused are going to react to the lane swap initiated by Rain, so they're just going to stick their bot lane in that bot lane as well, try and get Ryze starved of some farm early on. Ryze actually just following Nutri around, and now they know that their blue buff has been taken, and Nutri is going to head over to his blue buff, opposing blue buff on his Infused, so he is going to get spotted out by that ward. Is there going to be a reaction from Infused here?
I have to think there will be, as Jax is crossing over. Nutri is, taking quite a lot of damage in those early levels here. Geobob is going to collapse in with Katarina.
Oh, that was close. Doesn't like Nutri is going to head onto Geobob. Geobob has not got level 2 yet. Is going to be forced to flash away. Katarina is in a bad position here. They're like in a very, very precarious position. All they need is a good Q to come out from Nutri, and Nutri picks up that first blood. That's dangerous. You do not want to be giving Nutri that kind of level advantage as well as that kind of gold lead.
Yeah, and I believe Nutri actually ended up picking up the blue buff. He did. He left with 2 smaller minions there. Rain had to get that done because essentially what they've done is punished themselves heavily. Leona not very good in a lane swap. Vayne not very good at tower pushing. Ryze almost horrible in a 1v2 situation, so they had to get something from that passage of play, and they ended up doing that. They secured the buffs, they got the kill on middle lane, they pushed back a champion that is really going to heavily snowball, and now they're forcing Dan to come up to this top lane against that.
I really like this. Usually in this kind of situation, you would see Infused Dan, so the opposing jungler move down to force the tower push on the other side, so trade a tower for tower. However, they know that Leona and Vayne will not be able to tower dive early on against the Jax and Xin-Zhao, so they move their Xin-Zhao up to the top lane to sort of prevent that tower push. And it's actually forced Nutri back now, and Nutri's going to have to react to this bot lane push.
This was a conversation I had with Vlanatak, the North American LCS analyst for Team Dignitas, about whether you go for the 2v2 in the lane or the 3v1 push. And the general consensus is 3v1 pushing is always better because you secure objectives in the lower side of the map.
Infused haven't needed it. They've already taken that bot lane.
They haven't needed it, but it's a quick rotate to Dragon, and now they're not in place to do it. Smite is available. Dan hasn't even cleared those small minions, and he is not using his time wisely. We've already talked about how the larger creeps are the ones that stack up that machete towards Feral Flare, and he's wasting a lot of time doing it. This isn't benefiting his build. They're not securing many global objectives from it. All they're doing is slightly delaying a Vayne Leona lane that really shouldn't do too well against the Jax anyway if they were to dive in because of how short range they are.
Anyway, it does look like the first tower of the game is going to go over to Infused. Like you said, there was not a rotation for Dragon, and now Nutri has put a ward down. So Dragon control is firmly in Rain's favour here with having the vision, and Infused not having their vision themselves. Wawa and Red actually going to push themselves up to this second turret, and Nutri is there to back up the Rise. Dan is now rotating around towards that Dragon area, but will get picked up by that very, very timely ward placed by Nutri.
That ward is the only thing on the map that has any presence for Rain over Dragon. They've got 2 members up in the top lane, they're pushed back past the tower, and Teleport is only just now off cooldown for Warrior, so they were in a situation where if Infused had forced that issue, they could have gone for it. Dan's kind of come around to this bottom side of the map, but doesn't have a lot to do until that new minion wave joins. They may get this inner turret. I want to check the health on it. It's still pretty high, so they're unlikely to push this on the next minion wave. And again, Dan is pushing back his Viral Flare. They forced the teleport out again. This should be Infused.
Ooh, Blackjack coming in onto Emberlight. Emberlight does use the ward jump to get away. The Zenith Blade missing by a fraction there. And I do just want to say that you're right, if they could have rotated around for that Dragon, even with the ward being there, it would end up being a 4v3 or a 4v2 at worst. So they probably could have secured that objective a long time ago, and that was just a bit of a misplay from Dan, unfortunately, not using his time to the best effect. Emberlight is going to get knocked up, and Nidley does jump in and pick up the kill. A great takedown, the Ignite coming down, and Emberlight not having the best early game.
Blackjack just kind of getting away with being out of lane here, and Rain are going to actually rotate down. Dan is in a fair amount of trouble, but does get himself behind the turret. Rain are actually going to be collapsed on by Infused, but Infused don't really want to pull this trigger on this. They don't want to go in too quickly. Even though they have a lot of control, it is still difficult going against a late game team. You don't want to give them anything.
Yeah, and now they're going to push that one lane up with the bottom tower already having gone down. It does look like Geobob is going to try and get a bit of damage here. Level 6 to the Rise is level 5. The CS difference between the two is minimal though, so the lane swap having not really proved too detrimental to either top laner. They're very, very equal. Rise has also got that tier. Jax not having yet been back, but currently sitting on 1300 gold, probably wanting to wait out till he can get that Atlas.
And that's the problem with going the defensive style on the jungler in this lane swap situation, is they weren't able to punish Rise in the 1v2 situation, which you'll see Rise in LCS games at this point hovering around 10 CS, and he's incredibly far behind. Right now, he's in a little trouble.
He's going to get a little bit of trouble. He does flash out of the Talon Strike that was going to come in from Geobob, so that was a very good flash after the 3 Talon Strike. And now, Dan not having the best early game, like you said, making some poor map decisions, and now really struggling to get that farm up for his Feral Flare. You need to make the decision when you're a jungler going down the Feral Flare route. Do I get the ganks off early and get my team ahead, or do I just farm? And then we saw Unicorns of Love in the first game that we had. They made that decision and it worked out for them. They farmed their Shyvana, and Shyvana ended up doing very, very well into that mid and late game, with the Feral Flare stacks being very quick by 15 minutes. Dan, being Zinzao with a slower clear time, is not going to hit that threshold until about 20 minutes.
Honestly, I feel it's just an uncomfortability in playing against the lane swaps for the team. They want to play the safest way, but when playing against a lane swap, you need to be greedy as possible. When you have the map control, you need to take the objectives that you're essentially being given, and Rain are going to continue to have free wards on this Dragon, and now they've got a pink ward. That's a big expenditure here to secure Dragon control, when really Infused should have already taken Dragon. Early Dragon's of course not worth as much anymore, but it's still an objective that was there that could have been taken, and Rain will be the first team to attempt the Dragon.
Yeah, actually, something I don't agree with. Geobob teleported top even though they have a ward on the Dragon. It doesn't like Infused is going to try and jump in. Katarina's ultimate not managing to finish this Digger. He's going to get taken down. Nutri having great positioning there. Slight is going to get a good from them, and a great spear coming out from Digger. He's going to pick up the kill as well. So again, Digger having a great Nidalee game. I do want to pick up on the fact that the CS difference between between Lucian and Vayne was very, very high until just a moment ago, and as just while I'm playing the best early game, even though you don't take around the entire lane, Vayne unfortunately had a little bit more trouble in that top lane, and still managed to outfarm Wawa on that Lucian. So we're seeing a very good Vayne play coming up the side. And that was very, very good.
And we're seeing the difference in the middle lane of why Katarina's not often picked that much, because she struggles through the early laning phase, and then you need the kills to come on top of that, and hasn't had any yet. 3 deaths, no kills, no assists, so hasn't even had one reset in this game yet. Until you get to that point in the mid-game fights, she's punished heavily. There is a CS difference, there's 2 kills onto Nidhi, now has the Athene's Unholy Grail. It's just that Katarina is inconsistent without kills. You can't just get farm on Katarina because she's a melee range champion.
I have to question the Katarina. Maybe he was looking to get that laning phase won, because Katarina does do okay against Nidalee. However, she did get locked down early on in a very, very tough early game. The Soraka pick was available too, and Soraka being a very highly competitive champion in the middle. Looks like Warrior is going to get engaged on by Geobob. Geobob does use the Bilgewater Cutlass to try and slow him down, but Warrior does pop that ultimate and get the spell vamp off, and Dan wasn't there in time. So again, just going to be a trade up the top lane, and Warrior again escaping with his life. Oh, but Rain is coming in. Digger is using his red buff to great extent, and he's going to come in. Before Dan is getting taken down, the Rufus is coming down. He's going to get a kill over to Nutri again. The Void Assault being used to tank up those turret shots. Nutri having an excellent game on Kha'Zix.
But this is all they needed to do, was they needed Nutri to get the kills and the assists in the early game, secure the objectives. They needed, you know, Digger is a mid-range champion here on Nidalee. It's not an early game champion, no. It's not a late game. All they need Digger to do is be consistent with spears in the mid game and allow the rest of their lanes to free farm. Yes, they're not significantly far ahead, but when you take into account, let's take a look at the Relic Shield, 173 extra on that for Vayne. So Vayne is actually considerably ahead on gold, just about 500 between the two AD carries. And that's not good if you're a Lucian. To be behind a Vayne is not a good position to be in.
Vayne's sitting on 2k gold right now too, so she can go finish up most of her Blade ranking. It does look like Lucian is going to get caught out. Grimdog getting the ultimate on top of him from Leona and going to go down to Warrior. Poor positioning from Wawa there. He didn't have any idea where most of Rain was, and unfortunately caught himself on the wrong side of the jungle.
Yeah, just unfortunately out of position for that one, and again, that's just going to put him a little bit further behind. That kill went over to Ryze, as the first kill has gone on to one of these late game carries. Ryze is very close to having his core items finished. He really only just needs that tier and the Rod of Ages right now to start becoming effective, and it's a good thing for Ryze. Actually, he's only level 8 and he's close to finishing that Rod of Ages, just the recipe cost left, so he'll get extra levels compared to if he were in lane. It's just one of those things that, because he got pushed back on experience fairly early on, he's actually going to be benefiting a lot more from that Rod of Ages for the extra levels while he stacks that up.
I have to say though, Infused needed to be ahead in this early game. They have the sort of more mid-game champions. The late game champions are all in favour of Rain, like we said. And now that Rain are already ahead, it's going to be hard for Infused to get back into this. And to be honest, I don't see any real avenues of getting a good gold chunk back. So again, the next dragon fight is going to be key. I mean, they're only 4k behind. It's not like they can't win a properly timed dragon fight. They do have the early power in their levels from the champions that they've picked. So Zingal very good early on, so is Lucian. Karma pretty decent, as well as Katarina, but Katarina is so far behind she won't be near as many as she will. So again, Imberlite having a pretty terrible game, not having the best laning phase either. So again, probably going to be kicking himself for that Katarina.
I'm trying to... I feel like Imberlite, that Fiendish Codex is going to go towards the Death by a Grasp, and then...
The other
I'm wondering where the
tome.
Amp Tome's going, because... I mean, there was a discussion...
Will of the Ancients, maybe?
Well, this was the discussion I was going to bring up, was that Lifesteal Cat actually isn't as effective now as it used to be.
No, because all of her abilities are AoE, so you get the reduced spell.
Yeah, exactly, and the way that she scales is the same with spell penetration. Is not quite as effective anymore as just going for that DFG style, does get as much burst and then go for the penetration.
Yeah, there was a Reddit post on it recently with the actual numbers, and her level 18 numbers are that she heals about 187 from an entire combo round, which is not a significant amount considering late game health pools for Katarina range in about the 2.2 area. Does look like Infused Dan is going to get caught out by Blackjack. Incoming from Nutri. A great crescent sweep and flash means that Nutri is going to get locked down, but there's the solar flare. Is it going to get followed up? A great then coming out from Vayne. Rain Slight in the ultimate, the Night Hunter form there. He's going to try and chase down the rest of Infused. Dan, unfortunately, baiting in his support red to Wawa just going to have to have the golems as their red buff is helpfully taken away.
It is. And the rotate will come out from Rain. I imagine they'll push mid and then rotate down towards Dragon. They don't have the one-man overlap anymore because the Katarina has respawned. They've got to be careful of teleport as well. Both teams have teleport available, so it's not that big a problem. But Nutri at this point can solo Dragon. Yeah. Kha'Zix is able to do it with the isolation damage, but with Vayne there as well, with Leona, it's considerably more difficult for Infused, considering they've got Dan in the middle lane who just took a spear, is very low, no way of contesting that. Reyna on point in a game that theirs is the bottom tower that is down. They should not have taken 2 dragons in this game by 15 minutes.
Yeah, so they got the early advantage, unfortunately they threw it away. And like you said, it was just maybe nerves against playing against the lane swap. And this looks like a tactic that Rain have practiced. Infused maybe not so used to dealing with it. And maybe they should have had the foresight to know that why would they pick Vayne into a Karma lane if they're not going to lane swap? Maybe they were just expecting the Vayne player to be a solid Vayne player, maybe thinking he can get away with it. Again though, Infused taking that first tower but not capitalising on the dragon control they had. Like you said, the only control that Rain had over the early game dragon was a singular ward. And if they forced it, I don't think Rain could have kept up. Anyway, bit late for that now, having 2 dragons going over to Rain, and the global gold in favour of Rain at 6k.
Xin Zhao is only at 12 stacks, now at 13, but at 16 minutes into the game, that shows you how much defensive work he tried to do in the early game and how that's punishing him. Wawa and Red are going to be pushing towards this turret. It's only really slight hit for now.
Slightly, he's going to try and get onto Red. The speed boost coming up from Red and the heal too. Are they going to be able to follow him up? The red buff is on Vayne. She is going to try and get a condemn into the wall. There's the condemn. And a good flash from Digger does get the kill. Forces a slight to Vayne. They're in a bit of a bad position. Is Infused into Light going to get a kill? Yes, he will pick it up. Incoming neutral. He's going to pick up a kill onto Xin Zhao there. The ultimate coming out from Timberlight is going to get picked off by Rain as well, with a great Leona ultimate, not actually picking up an assist though as he went down before it hit.
Geobob didn't teleport during that fight, and you can see how low Nutri is. I mean, unless
I haven't been impressed with Geobob teleporting.
I mean, unless he's pushing on this turret and gets the turret, there's no point of him holding that teleport. Dragon is not available. There's no global objective to hold that teleport for, so teleport for the fight, because he just saw Warrior teleport into lane. As long as he's so far back, in fact, I don't believe Root Prison will interrupt the teleport, will it?
This is one qualm I have about Geobob's play. He is a laning top laner. That's where he excels. He excels in beating his lane opponent with his mechanic. I feel like his global map pressure not as key as some other top laners, like say Castle, like we saw in the previous game. He roamed from that top lane to win the other lanes. I just don't think Geobob has that same presence of mind. And as we've seen, the teleport on that dragon fight, he teleported to the top lane instead. Didn't use the teleport in that fight, and again, not having the best awareness in this top lane. And Rain are making him pay for it with the gold lead that they're taking from this.
Essentially, when you run teleport in the top lane, if you aren't getting the value out of it, you're not using a summoner that would win you the lane. He is ahead in farm, but that kill and the global gold does separate the two. 500 is the difference between them. So he's not winning the lane, he's not using teleport to really win the rest of the map here for Infused. And Infused lanes, for the most part, are behind on the gold when you take into account global gold. They're up on CS in 2 lanes, but really it's just a matter of time before Slight starts getting a lot more free farm here as well, because Vayne can do that.
And he's already nearly hitting the 2 items that Vayne needs to excel, which is that Phantom Dancer and Blade of the Ruined King. Obviously Vayne, being an attack speed based champion, doesn't necessarily need damage to do excel. She gets that true damage from the Silver Bolts. That's what the mainstay of her late game mechanic is. Once she hits that Phantom Dancer, she may either head into a Bloodthirster, a Last Whisper, or an Infinity Edge. There's such a wide array of possibilities because she has everything that she needs from those 2 items to excel. On the other hand, Wawa, having only just finished that Bloodthirster, is going to be really far behind in terms of damage. But really now the main threat on the side of Rain is Nutri and Digger. Both of them output a lot of damage right now. The spears are really starting to hurt. And Timberlight is finding out right now, gets taken down to about an 1/8 of health, and really has to be very careful, actually going all the way back to his base to recall in fear of a stray enemy spear.
Item-wise, Wawa is perhaps 3,000 gold behind. That's not the difference between the two, but when you take into account his next item should be a Trinity Force, that is one of the most expensive items you can possibly buy, and he's not really as effective as he needs to be until that item is fully complete.
Dan actually warding out that barrel. That could be a current objective that the Rain team will be focusing on soon. Obviously, Kha'Zix having a good deal of damage applying to isolated targets like Baron and Dragon, so you need to be careful for the Sleep Baron there.
Yeah, he's not powerful enough to hit towards a Baron yet. He's quite a way away. Kha'Zix, not quite the same as the Feral Flare jungle. He's great against Dragon, not so much against Baron, because he's not really affected so much by the attack speed debuff of Dragon, whereas Baron just has a lot of damage. But Rain is just able to just take away the jungle here from Infused, and they're just setting up camp. They've got a significant lead, and from here they know their team composition.
It does look like Neutral is going to take your solid advice. He does look like he's heading towards that next as an item. He's already picked up the Giant Spell, and I just feel really bad for Dan right now. He has no survivability out of his build. He's got a very aggressive jungle build there, and he's not going to survive in these team fights because right now there is no lane phase. It doesn't like Geobob, unfortunately, stuck in that top lane. He's going to get tried by time. He's trying to strike out, but unfortunately he's not going to have anything to come of it, and Rain Tree is unstoppable right now, and Kha'Zix again yet another kill, almost completely dominating this game. We've seen Kha'Zix do that every game with that in, and I just think we need to start realizing Kha'Zix is not nerfed into the ground. He's still a very strong weapon.
Yeah, still incredibly potent, and you see that with the ban rates that Kha'Zix has up at the LCS and top challenger level. So one thing that Rain maybe need to be a little bit more comfortable doing if they're playing with Vayne is they're sending Ryze here, which is fine. Ryze is a champion that has a very similar playstyle to Vayne. That sounds really strange because they're very different champions kit-wise, but essentially you want one of them in the solo lane pushing and the other tower sieging alongside the Nidalee. Ryze in this situation is actually kind of fine to do that because what they're doing is they're powering Ryze up to fight against Jax, compared to a Vayne whose counter-strike, who when Jax counter-strikes isn't going to have the effect. So Vayne is just going to take objectives across the map and look for a fight.
Interesting ultimate coming up, but the only hitting no one. Use Dan possibly thought to be in that rush. He is going to go down pretty quickly though to the Vayne. Looks like a shutdown on Nutri comes out for Imberlight. Unfortunately, Dan goes down at the same time. And Flash Rune Blizzard onto Imberlight from Ryze means that he is going to go down. Digger is unstoppable with a stray spear. Is he going to be able to pick up Lucian now? Grimdog not having a great game. Exhaust comes out. He's going to get taken down with a takedown, and that is going to be a complete ace for Rain for just the death of Nutri.
Yeah,
they could rotate around for Baron now as well.
I don't believe Warrior was even in the beginning of that fight, so he's just kind of tagged onto the back end of that one, and Rain took a very convincing fight there. They don't feel like they even need the smite to do this. They've got a good amount of damage here between Vayne. Nearly's going to be able to heal up Blackjack as a tank, and Warrior's got a tank himself as well, so there's enough to swap around here. Nobody's going to get anywhere near that Infused. They have to sense it because there's no reason for Rain not to push. So they'll have a rough estimate on the timer here for Baron, but it's just the case that they've gone here for Baron overtaking an inhibitor tower, which when playing as a team with Nidalee is actually a good choice when you're 6-0 and 10.
Ryze can finish off that Frozen Heart now. He's going to completely counteract Jax's passive, so it's going to be really tough for Infused to get back into this game. They need to get Katarina into that late game phase. However, we haven't seen one of the Ancients come out. We have seen a Deathcry Dragon in so did make good use of those Amplifying Tomes and Fiendish Codex earlier in the game. Didn't go into the Will of Ancients like we feared. So there is ways back into this game for Infused, but they have to be very lucky many, many times over.
Yeah, there's a long way to go between these two.
Oh, looks like Geobob is going to get caught out for that turret. I don't know if he's going to be able to do anything with it. A good counter-strike means he may escape, but no, one more dash from Vayne. In fact, doesn't even need to. He manages to use her passive to catch him. And Geobob, unfortunately, doing what he's done all game and overstaying his welcome in that top lane, camping there a little bit too much. The term island of top lane, not the take it too literally for Geobob.
It shouldn't apply to Jax and Ryze. That's not what a Jax and Ryze do. Jax wants to push all the time, Ryze wants to free farm. You can't have both, and Ryze will win that by freezing the lane in a position and allowing his team to rotate. There's no way for Jax to just try and go 1v1 all the time. They have to swap it up.
And he hasn't got the items. Well, he has now, but he didn't have the items previously to be able to 1v1 a Vayne with so many items.
He still doesn't have the items. He needs a finished Blade of the Ruined King and the boots available. Potentially even a defensive item because Vayne is 4-1 and 9. Has the Blade of the Ruined King and the
Oh, Dan is going to flash in, gets taken down immediately with only the Giant Spell as his defensive item. Infused are not going to follow him up there, so that was maybe a desperation play from Dan. I think they know they're quite far behind. They're actually going to have to see this inhibitor off the back of that team fight. GG's coming out from Wawa already, so Rain may have been taking this game.
Yeah.
Dan will call GG too.
Rain are at 24 minutes in at a point where their team composition shouldn't really be affected around 5 to 6 minutes, and they're 18 into it. So they've already accelerated their game plan well early. into this game.
I've got to say again, Nutri in the jungle has done a great job, and their Geobob is coming in. The Mantrid Inner Flame doing a little bit of damage, but Karma is way too far behind to get any sort of effect right now. This is going to be 2 inhibitors going down. Is Lanky Dan going to re-engage? Yes, he will. He's going to get re-twisted up though. He's going to go down immediately. A good Crescent Strike gets the team mixed up, but then Nutri picks it off as well as Diddley getting a kill. Geobob takes a lot of damage. In comes Imbolite, but that double exhaust doing exactly what it's meant to do. Exhaust going down onto Slight. He's going to get taken down by Grimdog at the last moment. This is going to be a 1-for-4 trade in favour of Rain, and they're going to close this game out.
Yeah, this is likely to be the end here. As Rain do have the minion waves pushing in, it's only a matter of time here. Those turrets are going to die pretty quickly as well to Rain. And Rain just had a better team composition for this. They picked champions that are going to be better into the late game in a game in the meta where games are going later and later. They didn't even need to get there. Rain are going to win this at 26 minutes, and there's not much that Infused could have done from that because they had the tower first from the lane swap and then never used anything from it.
Yeah, unfortunately just a little bit of a misplay early on in the jungle for Infused. There was no rotation, no Dragon control secured, and Rain just capitalized on that, and we just saw how good Nutri is in the jungle. He really played to the best of his ability on that Kha'Zix, dying once, kind of needlessly at the end, but again, I just feel that the map pressure that Nutri exerted, the control and rotations that both him and Rise doubled up to get, just won it for Rain, and every lane on Rain's side performed exceptionally.
And you can see that Infused weren't rotating because Red is level 9 at the end of that game.
Yeah.
That's just a sign of a duo lane that just sat in the bottom.
Yeah, unfortunately didn't do that well. There was 3 levels behind on Wawa for Rain, and 3 levels behind on Blackjack with Red. So again, that bot lane not having a good job. Anyway, does look like we're going to head into our next game after a short break, guys. We will bring you back the schedule when we know who we're going to be casting.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether we're down into the lower bracket or whether we'll be casting the first best of 3. I believe it'll be the first best of 3.
I think it's the first best of 3.
Winner
so
round
it'll
3.
be the upper bracket final we bring to you, and then we'll be bringing you the lower bracket final, I believe.
Yeah, I think we've got upper round 3, then the winners bracket final, then the lowers bracket final, and tomorrow we've got more games. But there's plenty still to come here today, so stick with us here for the I-51 Razer League of Legends Challenger Cup coverage. We'll be back